I do want to welcome everybody on tonight. We have a very special program this month. And Reynaldo has come aboard, and I know many of you have met him before. I know I met him in Miami as well, and know just what he can do. He has translated many of our biographies that we have done, including a couple of mine as well, because I had sort of this thing about Cuban players early on. And I enjoyed really looking into the history. I'm working on a very obscure one now from back in the early 19s, Alfredo Cabrera, but probably not, yeah, Cabrera. He's really an interesting character because he was actually born in the Canary Islands, but grew up in Cuba, and has a great story. So I've already reserved his biography in bio project, so nobody's going to take him on except me. So, but I really want to thank Reynaldo for being here. Welcome, bienvenido, gracias, and buena suerte aquí.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes,
it wasn't the easiest way to join us tonight.
From a safe house.
Yeah, really. Absolutely.
Yes. It's a very funny remark.
It's a great story to tell. And what I have asked him to do, because usually I will start out with some sort of a baseball poem, because that's my thing, is the poetry. But I've always been looking for some poetry in Spanish. We have had on Turnstile, we've had a few people write some foreign language poems. We've had Brazilian Portuguese for one. I think we've had one Spanish one way back when, but we need to up our inventory on La Poesía en Español. So I have asked Reynaldo to give us a little bit of that today as a welcome.
Thank you. So I'm going to start. This poem is called Elegía por Martín Digo, a eulogy for Martín Digo, and it was written by Nicolás Guillén, who is considered Cuba's national poet. And it's a very short one, but I know it by heart because I learned it when I was 11 years old.
Beautiful.
And it goes, ahí viene, se lo llevan, con la fuerte cabeza reclinada, con su guante de pitcher va Digo, el rostro ceniza, la muerte de los negros, y los ojos cerrados persiguiendo una blanca pelota, ya la última.
Una blanca pelota.
That was after his passing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Gracias.
No,
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we have a meeting with the Boston chapter. We've started doing these Zoom meetings once a month. The next one is scheduled for April 14th, which we thought was going to be possibly the night before. Well, it is the night before.
Yeah, first
the
home
home opener at this point. And we may have something else to talk about then. Reynaldo will tell us a little bit about his past, what his background is with interest in baseball. I guess he used to play some too. He was telling me. I went down and visited last week in Connecticut, and he was a catcher mostly, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you want to talk more about some of your writing and editing, and then how you connected with SABR. And we've got a few people from Cuba Ball that are on the session here. That's where I first met with Reynaldo. I think it was in 2015.
2015 February in Holguin.
Yeah. So take it away. Tell us some of your background and how you got here, and speak in English too, because I know when you majored in English, you also had a minor in French, so you could give this talk in French, I guess.
Yeah, I think I can.
You talk about Le Grand Orange.
Wait, after spending 13 days translating for the Africans in the prison where I was, trust me, I can.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
really?
I was, yeah.
Wow. Cool.
That better be part of the story.
I'm gonna get there. So I started, my interest in baseball started actually in 1993. I was 10 years old. And I went to a game with my family and I fell in love with it. I didn't like it. I hated it, actually, the game. But I fell in love with you know, with the passion, with the colors, the smell, the you know, the people over there rooting for the same cause. It felt really democratic. So I started reading about baseball. I was a very lousy student. I had good grades, but I had horrible studying habits. So my father came up with the idea of bringing as much baseball information as he could, including books and magazines in Spanish and English. And I started reading baseball in English. My first readings in English language were about baseball. So by age 14, I could speak English, and at the same time, I could have a baseball argument with, you know, somebody who had seen more games than me. So, but when I finished high school, I decided to major in English because even though I started studying a little bit more, I continued to be a very lousy student. So since I could speak English, I thought, oh, this is gonna be easier than if I study engineering or something where I have to, you know, put more effort. So after graduating, actually, I continued to read about baseball. The team of Holguin won its first championship in 2002. That's 20 years ago, and I was in the dugout for a game because that was my first year at the university. On my research paper, I was making my research. I was, you know, doing my research paper on the team, whether they won or not, and they ended up winning, which was, you know, like, you know, that movie with Drew Barrymore about the Red Sox and Jimmy Fallon. I don't know what I don't
Fever
remember the name.
Pitch.
Fever Pitch. Like Fever Pitch. They made the movie without knowing that the Red Sox were going to win. I made my research paper without knowing that the team was going to win. So I continued to research about baseball. And after working 2 years at the university in Havana as a professor of English, I came back to my city to become a translator and photographer for the webpage. And then I started writing about baseball with my Universo Béisbol magazine, which was, you know, something really small at the time, being very, very careful because there was a lot of persecution against anyone who said something that could be troublesome. As years started passing by, I became bolder and bolder, and I started saying things. And since nobody was telling me anything, I got even bolder. I became a SABR member in 2013 or 2014. I don't remember very well. It was through an article posted about 4 home run games. And, you know, SABR does a lot of research, and there's been 3 guys in Cuba who have hit 4 home runs in a game. And 2 of them were power hitters, but the other one hit only 67 career home runs. And actually SABR, the article pointed that out, like 67 career home runs, like, okay, so what happened here? And I wrote to the author and said, I don't remember who the author was. Look, what happened here was that year it was aluminum bat. They had a live ball, and there was a lot of home runs that year. Actually, funny thing, a team like Las Tunas scored 30 runs in a doubleheader, and they lost the 2 games on mercy rules, 38-15 and 28-15. Just imagine that.
So football
It was like
scores.
football scores or handball scores, or, you know, water polo. No, not water polo. Handball scores, football scores. You know, the scores were crazy. So they started lowering the ball. That's when I became a SABR member through that little. And then in 2015, I made the Cuba Ballistas. There was Bill, there was Chuck Hildebrandt, Peter Bjarkman was there too. I was very excited because I knew that Chuck was going to be there, that Bill was going to be there, and Peter was going to be there. The only ones that I knew, you know, online, the only ones I have had communication with before. And it was very exciting. And then I went with them to the next game, and then we moved to Bayamo, and I traveled to Bayamo with them as well. And that's when Bill came up with the idea of translating Cuba's baseball legends, which is right here. And I said, why not? Let's give it a shot. And then after that, Chuck Hildebrand came with the idea of having me in his media committee in Miami, because Miami was going to revolve about Cuban baseball, the 2016 conference. And he came up with that idea. A lot of people from SABR shipped in financially, and I could make that first trip outside of Cuba. And then I made it in 2017. Things got rocky after that with the embassy in Havana being shut down for Cubans. I couldn't make it to 2018 or to 2019. It was, part of my plan. I just couldn't make it. And because there was no way to go to get a visa because the embassy was closed. But I continued to cooperate with SABR. I finished the Puerto Rican book, and I finished this one, the Dominican book, while I was in Mexico. And after that, through my continued work with SABR, I contributed to the National Pastime. Bill and I wrote an article for the book about Babe Ruth's visit to Cuba in 1920, which was very well known in Cuba because of Cristobal Torrienta hitting 3 home runs in a game in which Babe Ruth didn't hit any. But honestly, Babe Ruth during that series hit the longest home run ever hit in the cavernous Almendar's Park. And so after that, I started living in Havana. I met people from Cuba Bowl in 2018 in Havana. We spoke and all that, and I hung out with them. And I actually was the person who had to go and ID Peter Bjarkman's body when he died in Havana. I had to go to the crime lab because they called us and said, okay, we know it's him, but we need confirmation that nobody stole his passport, things like that. So I had to. It was a tough moment, but it was our calling. It's what we do for our friends. And things got a little bit rocky back in Cuba with me and my baseball writing. They started narrowing the things you were allowed to say, and things that I said, say, in 2016, 2017. I think that if I decided to say those things today, to publish those things today, I would have been in serious trouble. So I got a couple of scary moments over there, and I jumped to Mexico, tried to get a U.S. visa in Mexico. Didn't work out. I tried to come in legally, but it was impossible. That there was first the Afghanistan problem, with the permanent COVID problem. Then the situation with Cuba got even rockier, so they were not issuing visas to Cubans. And when my time in Mexico was about to expire, it was set to expire February 25th, sorry. So I said, I'm not gonna be here a month before that. So on January 23rd, I crossed the border, spent 5 days in a detention camp in the border in Del Rio, Texas. And then 13 days in a prison center, which is for immigrants. No, it's not I'm not gonna find a serial killer there that I know. and spent 13 days there, mostly translating for, actually my time went by really fast because I was translating for the Africans who couldn't speak Spanish or French or English, sorry, and they could only speak French. And I was the only person in the whole prison, including guards and everybody, who could speak English, Spanish, and French. So I spent my time there translating. The guards loved me. The other prisoners loved me, and it went by really fast. And on February the 10th, I was released and came to Connecticut. Of course, before being released, my friends in Connecticut had to pay for a plane ticket. That was my release card. So they paid for a plane ticket, and I came to Connecticut, and I've been here waiting for my court hearings.
You told me that when you talk about crossing, the actual crossing and how you had to greet the American folks on this side of the border.
That's a funny thing. It was freezing, and I crossed the river about 70 meters wide, and it was up to my waist. Came back out, and I walked, and there was this Humvee, and actually knocked on the window because they were sleeping. I'm gonna write about this, but I'm not gonna say that they were sleeping because I don't wanna get them into trouble. It was a very young man and two very young women. None of them was older than 24 years old. And I turned myself in. They allowed me to change into dry clothes, and they called the Border Patrol, who were the ones who processed me. I was never up to that point. I was never handcuffed. I would be handcuffed later on to be transported to the prison, but before that, never handcuffed, nothing. It was really easy, but those first 5 days, no shower, no toothbrush, sleeping on the floor, eating not very solid meals, cramped up in a space where you actually don't have even, the floor is not enough for you to lie down. You have to, fold your legs and try to make space with everybody, because there's so many people in there that you have no idea. As a piece of information, in the month of January alone, 9,714 Cubans crossed the Mexico-U.S. border.
Wow.
Including me.
Just Cubans.
Just Cubans.
Yeah.
So right now what we're trying to do is, for those of you interested, please email Bill with your name and I can add you. We're trying to set up a committee on Cuban baseball, taking into account that Major League Baseball decided to include Negro Leagues, and that there are over 100 Cubans who were Negro Leaguers and never played in the majors. Some of them did, like Miñoso got his numbers, helped a little bit, but some Cubans, many Cubans were in the Negro Leagues and are now major leaguers. So we can help a lot with the research. We have people in Cuba who are going to be our eyes in there, and people in Cuba who have access to libraries, who will have access to documents, and they will help our committee. So we're trying to get at least 10 people in the committee to start it up as soon as we can. We want to create an encyclopedia on Cuban baseball, and there's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of energy. Those of you who attended the conference in New York, one of the members is the guy who produced the documentary that we aired in New York, and we're just trying to push that idea forward, because we think that we can be very helpful to SABR's research, because most of us have done a lot of baseball research in our life. We discovered the resting place for Cristobal Torriente, which was a mystery. We actually worked with the forensics department of Havana to clarify all that. And we recently managed to locate the grave of Esteban Bellan, who was the first Latin American player to play professionally in the United States in the 1800s. He's a Fordham University Hall of Famer, and he played for the Troy Haymakers and the New York Mutuals before going back to Cuba and managing the club Havana. And he's one of the most mysterious Cuban players in history, because actually we have discovered that the date of his passing that can be found in Baseball Reference, and in every reference is mistaken. And it's probably an error that took place, a transcription error that took place in the 1920s, and it has been passed on to date. It says 1923 we are very, very sure that it was 1903 for several reasons that we would like to explain later on. It's not the time for that, but it's part of our biggest breakthrough because the gravesite is from 1912. And obviously he was dead before 1923 if the gravesite is from 1912.
We just had an inquiry in the last day or two about Hector Martinez, right?
Yeah, my guys are gonna get onto it very soon. We'll see what we can do about it.
Yeah, this just came out sort of coincidentally in the last couple of days, wanting to learn more about him. Some other SABR member wrote in.
Mhm.
So tell us more about Universo Béisbol. What was that, and how did people access it at the time?
Okay, so I started as a PDF magazine, and people would actually pass them along on flash drives or download them from the web. It was my idea. Back then, people in Cuba didn't have internet access. I was one of the few, and I came up with the idea of letting people know what was happening in Major League Baseball, bringing certain stories that people didn't know about because they didn't have internet access, or because you know, the books are not available, you know, and there's not enough reference about baseball in Cuba. And also Japanese baseball. I had a thing for Japanese baseball, and actually for a time I was Cuba's lead Japanese baseball specialist, because we are not I mean we were not we didn't have enough access, and people in Cuba didn't have any interest. All the information about Japanese baseball was either in Japanese or in English, and many Cuban historians or journalists don't speak English. And actually my English background was the advantage. I think that despite my baseball knowledge, I wouldn't have made it this far if I didn't speak English.
I think it's important to people to understand that one of the reasons why Cubans were so interested in Japan, good to see you, my friend, is many of the Cuban National Series players, even going back to the days of Linares, and got to play in Japan. So many of the big stars in Cuba, including Yulieski Gurriel, Cepeda, had Leslie Anderson played in Japan. So there's a lot of interest in Cuba in those players' Japanese careers.
Yeah, back in the day, only Linares played there after his retirement, and his numbers were not very good. But before that, we had Chico Barbon, whom I managed to interview online, who was the first Latin American player in Japan. And we had also this guy who played for the Marlins, Orestes de Estrade. But you know, after the Linares experiment failed, Japan didn't find that much interest in Cuban players until Cepeda came along in 2014.
Reynaldo, one other thing, which tell us about your family. Your parents are still in Holguin, but you also have a wife and child as well.
Yes, my wife and daughter are in Holguin. Some of you met my wife when you were in Holguin in 2015. She came along with my father to say hello in the second game. Well, I had to leave them behind. The only person who had a visa to travel outside of Cuba was me. I used my Canadian visa to Mexico. I tried first to go to Canada, but at the time, Canadian authorities were not letting Cubans go into the country. We were only allowed to go in transit. So I used my Canadian visa to make it to Mexico, and I left my wife and daughter behind. Hopefully, when my situation is cleared up and I get hopefully green card, I can start the process for bringing them in. My wife is 5 years old, and she is starting school this coming Monday.
Wow.
So I'm definitely gonna miss all of that. But as a Cuban, those of you who know how life is in Cuba and how things work there. Many of us have to make this tough decision. And actually one of the reasons why I am being very careful about what I say is because I have my wife and daughter there. My father, you know, we have different views about politics, but he is my father and he supports my decisions, and I don't want to get him in trouble either. And my sister's a doctor. She has a managing position. She's not practicing, but she has a managing position. So if I become too outspoken, I might get them in trouble. So I am, you know, I am just dancing around, but using the same mentality that I used while I was still in Cuba. Be outspoken, but be careful.
You're able to communicate though over the internet.
Yeah, we use a similar method to this one. We use WhatsApp video almost every day. Sometimes it's impossible. Yesterday, my wife's phone ran out of charge, and she plugged it in, and it wasn't taking any charge, so we couldn't communicate yesterday. But almost every day we talk via video. I talk to my daughter. I ask her what her day has been like. Are you behaving? Are you listening to your mother? You know, those little things very carefully, because it's very difficult to educate a child from the distance, and at the same time you need to be. My wife was like, okay, it's not good cop, bad cop, but she has to be a little bit more of the bad cop, and I have to be a little bit more of the good cop because I am away, and she has to deal with certain things. And at the same time, if I become the bad cop, there will be a time in which she would want to talk to me. So, you know, we play a little bit with those strategies to keep things alive.
When the Major League season starts, you'll be able to go to some of the games, but you're not able to stay overnight out of state. Is that correct?
That is correct. Although Major League Baseball season is not set to start until April the 7th, and my first court hearing will be on March 29th. So maybe I will be cleared to stay overnight.
That would be good.
It will be interesting, because here I have the Orioles. I have nearby, you know, I have the Yankees, I have the Mets, the Red Sox, the Orioles. Those are the closest teams I have. The Nationals, I think they're relatively close to, and they're a team I would like to see too.
And we're certainly hoping you'll be able to come to the SABR convention this summer in Baltimore.
That is a yes. And actually, my committee in creation, we want to do something special about Mike Cuellar and Willie Miranda, and the two friendly games played between the Orioles and Cuba, one in Havana, one in Baltimore. I didn't miss a pitch in any of those two, by the way.
There's a couple of questions. We're a relatively small group. I think that questions in the chat, you could just sort of speak them out loud. Seamus, you had the first one, and then Ralph, you had a second one as well. Maybe you could unmute yourself and simply ask the question.
Reynaldo, thank you for your very interesting story and your brave deed of wading the Rio Grande. I'm assuming it was the Rio Grande.
Yes,
welcome to the United States.
Thank you.
My question is, the first Cuban player for the Red Sox was Eusebio Gonzalez in 1918. What do you know of him?
1980?
1918.
I don't know much of him. Now it's a very good subject for research, because the oldest I had heard of was Mike Herrera. One of the oldest I'd heard of for the Red Sox was Mike Herrera, who was an interesting case, because some people say that the Red Sox were the last Major League Baseball team to integrate. I beg to differ. Mike Herrera was not white. Mike Herrera was like me. And I am not white. My mother is white, my father is black. And Mike Herrera was actually in the Negro Leagues before playing for the Red Sox and after playing for the Red Sox. So it's an interesting, but now I will write down and find out what I can about this guy. Maybe my team can do something about him too.
Well, I did write his biography for Bio Project, and it's in SABR's book on the 1918 Red Sox as well, which anybody can download. I believe he played 3 games. I wrote this one 15 years ago, but a very short period of time. On my first Cuba ball trip, I went to the Biblioteca and did some original research on with Cuban newspapers there. It was kind of interesting experience.
And I think you found, Bill, that he returned to Cuba after his playing career, but we couldn't find anyone who knew him among the veteran players in Cuba, because he apparently lived until the 60s or 70s and was, we think, some people said he was the last player interred, or maybe 68, the last person interred in the monument at Colon Cemetery.
Which actually leads kind of into Ralph's question.
Yeah, Kit, I have a question. Is that shirt you're wearing intentional?
Yeah, no, I'm actually a Metros fan, as you know. But when you started talking about Holguin, I remember that the first time we met, I thought I've got a whole man in the way for you. Unfortunately, it is in Chapman's.
Well, and whose is it?
You got to. I don't know. It's a number on the back. No name.
Oh, Elvis Avila. That was the winning picture of the game of Game 7 of Holguin's championship series, and he's currently Holguin's pitching coach. Very good friend of mine.
Excellent, very good.
Ralph, did you have a question you wanted to put?
I did. Well, first of all, congratulations on finding Bayon, my friend. How are you? Congratulations on finding Bayon. Where did you find him?
We found him in his sister's grave. We went to the archives after, well, you remember Oscar. Oscar went through the archives and went. And one day he says, I see some Rosa Bayan hearts. Isn't Bayan's second last name Enriquez? And I said, no. Enrique he has 2 names, Esteban Enrique Bayan Hart. And we go like, oh my God. So we went to the forensics department. You met the guy. We asked for a court order because it's not our grave. We don't have authorization for that. We asked for a court order, and we started digging out boxes. And we found a box with the initials of his father, his older brother, himself, and his mother. And it was definite because his sister built the Pantheon in 1912 to put, she was the only living person back then, and she wanted to put her brothers and her parents together in the same grave. So she built, and it's a funny thing, the grave, when you read it, it says Rosa Bayan Hart 1912. And she died in 1912. She died in 1915 or 16. So it was accurate. The forensics department, it was, of course, the remains were very, very, they were not in good condition to make any positive ID. Sure. But he managed to identify remains of 4 different people. So that's all we can do.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So the question I actually put in the chat was, when I was last there, you not only pointed out how Torriente wasn't in the grave that we thought Torriente wasn't in, but Jose Mendez also was not in the monument to baseball, as he was actually buried with Tinti Molina. And my question was, has he been moved from Molina's grave and put in the monument yet, or is he still with Molina?
No, he's still with Molina. And the interesting part of that is you met a lot of people in our project, and Kit met those people too. We after Yacel got fired from television in 2019, we lost our platform to have people support, and Inder took advantage of that and started closing doors on all of our projects. So whenever we were trying to do something, they found a way to torpedo our plans. So we did manage, however, to put a marker, a monument for Mendez in that gravesite.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
We put a small jardiniere for people to lay flowers and all that. And whenever there's an anniversary, you know, our people still there, the ones who are still there, do something about it. And we did the same for Torriente and the same for Bayan.
That's great.
Gary sent a question to me, not in the chat in general, but it was kind of a related question as to how Cuban people today, fans today, view some of these greats such as Torriente, Diego, Mendez, etc.
Well, the sad part is that many of them have no idea. And some of what we did, that one of the things that actually angered a lot of people when our TV show was canceled, we were bringing the history of the game to people. We actually we managed to put Torriente's research on national television. And people were like, oh my God. So do we have these ball players? Mainly the younger generations, they only want to hear, and I think I mentioned that in the SABR committee in 2016, they only want to hear about Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. And if it comes to the majors, they just want to hear about Yuli Gurriel and Abreu and Otani and, you know, the current ones. They don't go back to learn about the many great players that we had in the past. You know, somebody like Diego, who even today, every once in a while, somebody in MajorLeagueBaseball.com writes an article about Diego, because, you know, his greatness is beyond question. So we were trying to do that, and we continue to do it through social media. Fortunately, lots of Cubans now have social media. And every once in a while, we bring, you know, an article of any sort about, you know, those great players. Like, for instance, Andres Ayone passed away in September, and he was a Mexican Hall of Famer. And a lot of people didn't know who he was. And, you know, he threw a perfect game in Mexico. And he's in the Mexican Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest pitchers to pitch in Mexico. And you go like, okay, why don't people know what's happening? So those things, we were trying to do it, but we're simply doing it now on social media and on YouTube channels. And, you know, the YouTube channel that we have, we bring those players every once in a while. Fortunately, with what we're doing, there's a lot of people who follow our work, who follow us on Facebook, who follow us on YouTube, and are learning from what we bring. Because we not only bring our experiences, our input, we bring people, we invite people who are in the US, who are in Europe, and, you know, who are older than us, and can bring you know, their input to our dialogue.
Kit, you had another question you wanted to ask about the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, so the Cuban Hall of Fame dates from 1939, and then stopped electing members after the revolution. And you were part of a group along with Sene and Peter Bjorkman and others who resurrected the Hall of Fame. Can you give us an update, maybe even tell us a bit about the struggle, because much of what you said is about the challenges that baseball historians face in getting any attention to pre-revolutionary Cuban baseball. And what's the current status of the Hall of Fame? I think you've had 2 inductions of players from both pre-revolutionary and post-revolutionary eras.
Yeah, well, first, this is actually one of the things that got me in trouble back there for writing about it, you know. So the thing is, we did bring the Hall of Fame. We started with 2 inductions in one. We would elect 5 players from the pre-revolutionary era and 5 players from the post-revolutionary era. People were like, oh, but why would you elect 10 players? And the thing is, nobody has been elected since 1960. We cannot allow these people who are old, who might die at some point, we cannot allow them to die without being recognized in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame.
There were Hall of Famers elected by a sort of a ersatz group in Miami, but those are not really members of the Hall of Fame.
No, they are not, because that group simply elects any player who defects. Any player who defects automatically becomes a Hall of Famer, and it doesn't work like that. You need to you need to check their careers, you need to check their contributions. So we elected 5 from the pre-revolutionary era, who were Miñoso, Camilo Pascual, Esteban Bellan, umpire Amado Maestri, and Marrero, whom you met. So Marrero was the only unanimous selection. And then from the post-revolution.
Reynaldo, what was the Cuban reaction to Miñoso going into the Cooperstown?
Oh my God, we actually had a YouTube exchange that lasted for over 2 hours, and people were extremely happy. We were happy. It was a horrible day before that, because we lost one of the founders of the Cuban National Series. One of the players who was a founder of the Cuban National Series, who was a champion of several amateur World Series. And that day, we were on the YouTube channel, Yasel Porto and I. You will meet Yasel Porto in Baltimore. Those of you who attend Baltimore, we're gonna go there. He lives in New Britain now, just 5-10 minutes away from here. And a lot of people were making comments on that YouTube channel, and I was surprised, to see so many young people happy about it and actually knowing who Miñoso was. The reaction, Cuban media made, full silence about that. Cuban media said nothing about that. It was only a Cuban media online site that said something about it, but didn't bring the power that it actually deserved.
Reynaldo, I was wondering, all this stuff is incredible, and obviously, thank you so much for sharing. Just bring it back to the States. I'm curious, with all the ballparks near you, once you're able to feel comfortable going out to ball games, is there one ballpark, major league ballpark, that you're most excited to get to, and why?
Okay, so I have been to 4 major league ballparks.
Okay, great.
3 of them on the field as media. I was in Fenway Park. That was my 2nd major league ballpark. No, 5 major league ballparks, sorry. Fenway Park. I was twice in Marlins Park, Citi Field, Yankee Stadium, and Camden Yards.
You've got some good ones already. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a list of 4 ballparks in the world that to me are the can't miss places in baseball. Fenway Park in Boston, Palmar de Junco in Matanzas. I visited those 2. Wrigley Field in Chicago, and Koshien Stadium in Japan.
Nice.
So those 4 stadiums are, but of the ones that I haven't visited, Major League Baseball, Wrigley is over there, of course. I want to see some of the West Coast. I'm very, very excited about the possibility of going to the San Francisco Stadium, Oracle Field. They change names every day because of naming rights.
They do.
One of the research projects that I had was actually how corporations have taken over the names of Major League Baseball stadiums. And Kit Krieger, who's right here, knows that trend is a very old one, because Cuba had a very, very, very good baseball stadium that he managed to restore something from that stadium, which is La Tropical, which was named after a brewery. Actually, the stadium's real name is Estadio Cervecería Tropical. So it's not La Tropical, it's Cervecería Tropical. So yeah, so Oracle Field is one of the ones that I want to meet to visit, and obviously the Dodger Stadium and actually one of my dreams is to go to each one of them. But I can't, for now, I can't be so greedy. I have to be content with visiting the ones in the area.
Well, something to look forward to.
Reynaldo.
You mentioned a YouTube channel, and Abby in the chat asked what channel you were talking about.
It's Swing Completo. Swing as in the baseball swing, and completo, complete, but in Spanish. We do
what
live.
kind of programming? Tell us a little bit more about it. Daniel's on the
Daniel
Zoom here
is
too.
the head of the board of Swing Completo. He's a SABR member and he's the head of the board. So we do several things. We do whenever something big happens, we do a little bit of a a live video. When I managed to make it to Connecticut the next day, they did a live video with me similar to this. When the players got elected, when Oliva and Miñoso got elected, we did another live video. We have a news segment that airs at around noon, and some nights we announce the presence of Major League Baseball players or boxers. We focus on baseball, but we try to talk about other sports too, and athletes of different sports who want to talk to us. They write to us and they go live, and people ask questions through the social media, and we go about that, different controversial topics, like the first time when Julie Gurriel explained why he was not allowed into Cuba recently was there. Jose Abreu goes there. Aroldis Chapman goes there. Any Cuban player in the major leagues might show up there and make comments. But not only current, we also have retired players. We had Ordóñez there, so anyone can show up there and have a casual conversation about different topics. Their
You can
lives
follow on Facebook
outside of
as well,
baseball.
right? On Facebook too.
You can find on Facebook too. Yeah.
If I can interrupt a little bit for a second, I didn't want to.
Look who we have here, Daniel de Malas.
What's up, man? How you doing? I didn't want to interrupt your speech. The story so touchy for all of us. Somehow we did one way or another the same trip here. So we're live right now. Swing Completo is live right now. We have a show that airs on Thursdays nights that is called Buzón de Swing Completo, which means Swing Completo mailbox. People write questions and when we answer, a couple of kids, very young guys, 20-something, both of them are live right now in our channel. We do a morning news Mondays, Wednesday, and Fridays. I do that one in the morning, 11 o'clock in the morning until 12:30. And then on Fridays, we are doing a live show. Tomorrow, we have Armando Rivero. He was in the minors for the Cubs. He was pretty well-known reliever in the National Series with Industriales and Havana before that. But he never made it to the majors. And to be honest, if you check his numbers, he should get a shot. He didn't. But we're very happy to have Reynaldo on board here in the United States. I myself live in Newington, so we're neighbors.
5 minutes.
And Swing Completo is actually one of our platforms. I mean, he got already Universo Béisbol. And anything you guys need from Cuban baseball, whatever it is, we hope that if we get approved on the committee, that we can approach any story, any interest in the past, any player that's still alive, we can reach anything. We are trying to get that done through SABRs and through that committee. Still, we're doing some our own things in our platforms, but SABR will be like the greatest place to do all that things. I just want to steal 1 more minute from your time and said that actually today was announced that that's fine. Today was announced that a Cuban Professional Baseball Association was born today. They're going to present it on March 15. And one of the main things that they're going to do, well, the first time they're trying to ask the mayors to make an independent Cuban baseball team to play in the baseball classic. That's going to be a tough conversation, but that's one piece of news that I just want to share with you guys.
And that cap you're wearing, that's the
Yeah,
Sueño
that's
Completo cap.
us. That's Sueño Completo.
Right.
Thank you, Will.
Bob Brady,
I
you had
want to-
Bob Brady, you had a question. Did you want to ask that out loud, or shall I read it? I don't know. Bob said he once met in Cienfuegos with the Unión Nacional de Escritor y Artistas, and it had not only writers with a baseball interest, but also photographers and artists. And he wondered if that union organization is still in existence, still active.
Yes, it is. It is. Currently, it exists, but right now, what happens is that after the protests that took place not last year, but the year before, in front of the Ministry of Culture, created a division among the intellectual society in Cuba. What happens right now is that there might be an interest in baseball by members of UNEAC, which is how the organization is called, Unión Nacional de Escritores y Artistas de Cuba, National Union of Writers and Artists of Cuba. So what happens now is that anyone trying to do research about something that goes beyond the grip of the revolution, that gets canceled, that gets shut down. And that's actually part of what I was explaining to Kit, was precisely that the reason why the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame was canceled was because all of us, the ones who were in the board, in the organizing committee, we were extremely holding our ground on certain players. For instance, because there was a first election, after the post-revolution election had Omar Linares, Orestes Quindelan, Braudilio Vinent, Antonio Muñoz, and I don't remember who the other one was. But the second election, Casanova, thank you. Yep. Casanova. The second election was tampered with. It was invalidated because there were not enough votes, because a lot of people refused to vote because there was pressure for them not to vote for Antonio Pacheco. So Antonio Pacheco was a long-standing member of the Cuban national team. He was a world champion in every category from 11 to 12 years. Every year, he was in every age group, he was a world champion internationally with the Cuban national team. He played all his career there. He managed and won championships there. He was a silver medalist in the Beijing Olympics. He was the manager for the Beijing Olympics. And he decided to settle in the United States. All of a sudden, he became persona non grata over there. And his numbers, his legacy, his leadership to us, the voters, to us, the organizing committee, it was outrageous not to have him in the ballot. So that second election was invalidated. That included Louis Tian, who was elected on that one. So that one didn't count. and we were going to re-elect to do another ballot in late 2018, and that one was shut down by the Cuban Baseball Federation because we proved that we were not going to be convinced to leave Antonio Pacheco or Louis Tient out of the ballot. Why Louis Tient? Because Louis Tient made a couple of statements when Fidel Castro died about the fact that, in his opinion, Fidel Castro had damaged professional baseball in Cuba, which is a true fact. It's not a lie. If you go to history, his actions led to the demise of the professional circuit in Cuba. So he didn't say a lie. He didn't tell any lies, but the Cuban baseball authorities were not happy with Louis Tient's remarks. So it is 100% sure that if Castro had died before the Obama visit and Louis Tient had made those remarks before the Obama visit, he would not have thrown the ceremonial first pitch that day. That is 100% confirmed and sure. He made those remarks and he became persona non grata.
One of the things that I found unbelievable is this effort to revitalize the Hall of Fame took place was the government didn't want to even call it the Hall of Fame because that recognized that it was a continuation
Yes.
of the pre-revolution. They wanted to call it glory, the something Hall of Glory or something.
The Hall of Glories.
And they held it up for months. And the group, it wasn't just, there was a former head of Cuban intelligence on the committee, the beat writer for Grandma, the National Communist Party newspaper. The opposition was beyond understanding. It was just bizarre.
Yeah, but the thing is, we were strong, and they realized they shut it down when they realized that we were A, smarter than them, B, our arguments were founded. We had basis in what we were saying. And 3 days before everything, lots of people were coming from all the provinces of Cuba. They had bus tickets, they had hotel booked. 3 days before, they call on a meeting and we say, oh, we're going to have the last organizing meeting. And all of a sudden they said, we are going to temporarily postpone it. And one of the things that I wrote after that, and I wrote an article that I entitled Our Game, which is the name of John Thorne's blog. And I said, we Cubans know that there is nothing more permanent than what the government labels as temporary. And kids, you know that very well because you've been to Cuba several times. And Daniel, who might still be over there, he's Cuban like me. He knows that I'm telling the truth too.
Reynaldo, this makes 2 halls of fame that Louis Tient should be in. So hopefully he'll be in both of them while he's alive to enjoy it. I wanted to ask you, since you brought up Louis, and he told me and about the corner, the square where people go to talk baseball in Cuba, and of course the movie that they did on Louis' return, which I'm curious if people in Cuba are able to watch that movie. But I'm more curious about the square and whether people are still going to the square to talk baseball.
Well, they still go to the square, or they were still going to the square before COVID hit. But normally they were not talking about baseball that much anymore. They were talking about soccer. However, Yasel Porto, whom some of you might know, was a very well-known baseball journalist who was on TV. And I walked by there with him a couple of times, and they always stopped us to ask us. They were talking about wrestling. We walked by and they would stop us to ask us about baseball. So there is still, I believe that the flame of baseball is still alive. And there is a clear example on that. In 2017, for the first time, Cuban television broadcast the World Series.
Oh, wow.
They didn't broadcast it live. They always broadcast the games 24 hours later. But that was the closest we ever had to that. After that, and taking into account that the Astros had Yuli Gurriel, the Dodgers had Puig, and they were both leading figures offensively in the World Series. After that, all of a sudden, November, December, you would be walking down the streets in Havana, and I even took pictures of that. You would be walking down the streets in Havana, and those places that had been overtaken by soccer, all of a sudden, people were playing stickball and baseball again. So that, when you see your own kind, because it's not like you're seeing a bunch of strange players you never heard of. Yuli Gurriel was a famous player in Cuba, and so was Puig before they left. All of a sudden, you're seeing them there, and you go like, oh my God, I don't see any Cuban playing in Real Madrid. As a child, you see that in your future, you say, wait a minute, there's no Cuban playing in Real Madrid. If I play this game, I can make it there. It works like that. That's how the mind of the human being works, and that's how the mind of children work. They see these guys as role models because they're closer to them. They saw them live in person. They will never see Messi or Ronaldo or Luka Modric in person. Sorry, unless they of course go to Spain or to Italy. But they did see these guys in person, and now they're seeing them in the best baseball in the world. Okay, I have a chance.
Has the series been on since 17?
Huh?
Has the World Series been on? No, not since then.
No, that was in 17. Then in 2018, they didn't broadcast it on the excuse that they were having talks with Major League Baseball about a possible
the exchange. Yeah.
About a possible agreement, which was announced in in December that year, and then they never signed a player. Why? Because there were certain irregular movements by the Cuban Baseball Federation. The deal in itself was based on information that was not completely accurate, for not saying was based on a lie. And no player was signed, and in April it was finally canceled. Now with the international draft coming into the new CBA, we might see some light down there, because the influx of Cuban players into Major League Baseball is nearly as disorganized as the path that I had to take myself.
Kit made a suggestion that I think is a really good one. People in Cuba who are baseball historians now. For economic reasons, it would be very difficult for them to be members of SABR, but perhaps some of us would like to make a donation that could help them become SABR members. If you get this research committee organized, that would be a nice way to be able to do it. The committee itself could invite some of these people, and those of us who might wish to donate could help them become members without it becoming an economic hardship on their part.
That would be very, very nice, a very nice thing to do, because I do know that there's a lot of people who obviously have all the conditions. I mean, yesterday I found that Dr. Oscar Fernandez, who conducted the whole research in the cemetery, is a SABR member.
Mm-hmm.
I found
I think that Sene, before he died, gave me a list of 5 people who he thought belonged in SABR because of the extent of the work. They were doing all the work on the location of the grave sites of I think almost every Cuban member of the Cuban Hall of Fame.
So if you have that list, it would be good, because that might mean that Tony Diaz might be on that list too.
Yeah, I try to remember. I know Oscar was on it, but those are of course 1-year memberships, and I think I did 2 years. But you know, and some of most are seniors, so a lot of them are eligible for the senior discount. So
Yeah,
and
well,
you would probably know who they are. So maybe I can send you those names, and then
that
you
would be great.
can, if people want to sponsor somebody, they can you can choose from those names. But you know, I tell you that the hardship right now, it's always been tough in Cuba, but because of the blockade and the just so many circumstances, and there's now I said somebody they replaced the 2-currency system with a 2-currency system, and it's been a disaster. I mean, it's a sad thing, and they just can't afford anything.
They call it the reorganization, and people in the streets are calling it the disorganization.
Yeah. And the black market's returned, and you know, I helped one of the old Cuban, Luis Zayas, who is the last surviving Sugar King, and he'd be dead if people didn't help out.
Yeah, the thing is, if you have those names, and they were names Sene gave you, these are people that will definitely be in our committee, because most of the work that we will do will rely on them doing things in Cuba. It's people who work with us, who have worked with us throughout the years. I mean, you were there with Tony, and when we were trying to locate Guillot's gravesite, and it's people who actually do it out of a passion. And not only that, it would be some sort of reward for the work they have done, because nobody in Cuba has given them any reward except for something that Yacel did before coming to the U.S., that he gathered all those, you know, all those seniors, and he gave them a nice diploma, not a fake one, something artistic, and he said, we owe you everything. We wouldn't have done anything without you guys. So it would be very good, a very good thing to do. I appreciate it.
Those of us who haven't.
I think Mark Cantor has had his
Oh yeah,
hand
go
up.
ahead, Mark.
Hi, Reynaldo, when we were there in 2016 in Cuba Ball, and we went and talked to the older fellows who had played in the who had played professionally. I think they corroborated what you were saying, that that once the revolution happened, their history was like wiped out, was almost wiped out. I remember a fellow sitting there with a Cuban baseball register from like 1956. And the best part about the register is it didn't matter what language it was in, you knew what you were reading. And by the way, when we were there in 2016, we went to the square where the fellows talked about baseball. And I don't know what they were talking about before my wife and I walked up to the square, but when we were there, they wanted to talk about, and they wanted to know. I told them I was from Rhode Island, and one of the fellows says, "Oh, I've been to Connecticut. I know where Rhode Island is," and all that. So, were you with us in the 2016 Cuba Ball?
I went to Pinar del Rio, so
yeah,
I think I took the bus.
Yeah, we picked you up because we were sitting right behind you. I'll tell you guys a funny story. So we're sitting right behind you in Pinar del Rio. I don't think the ballpark was the most hygienically.
Oh my God! No.
I just tell you.
Tell the story. Tell the story. It's beautiful.
But anyway, so we're sitting there right behind you, and like I think you're in the first row. Some coach comes up and all that, and you're with some young people and all that, and we're right behind you, and something hits me on my shoulder. Well, it turns out Pinar del Rio, the roof of the Pinar del Rio, I don't think is in the best of shape. And I don't know what hit me, but I'm glad it hit me on my shoulder as opposed to my head. So.
I remember that. It was a funny day because the young woman we picked up on the way,
Yes.
she's in the US now.
Oh,
She crossed the
great.
border a month before me. She used to be a friend of my well, she's still a friend of my wife's and me, but she's now far from the two of us geographically. And after that day, she would be the Havana tour guide moving every Cuba Bowl trip. She went to the forensics department with me to recognize Peter's body.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing that it happened. And she said, I'm not interested in baseball. And I said, you don't know what might come out of it.
Hmm.
And she said, you know what? Let's go.
You know, the one thing has nothing to do with baseball, and I'm pretty, as most people on the call know, I'm a pretty progressive sort. Yet I cannot understand how the economy works in Cuba. I tried for the week to try to understand it, and I couldn't understand it. I couldn't understand going. I can almost understand going to the cigar factory and people selling cigars on the, you know, taking home cigars and selling them on the black market. I can almost understand that, but I couldn't. I see people every morning getting on buses and doing something, but I just don't understand it. My brain just couldn't process the whole thing. That's all.
Well, it's now that you talk about it, it is impossible to understand even for us. One of the but to give you an idea, something that I told some people about, because you know, when I lived in Holguin, I lived in a bubble, but then all of a sudden I moved to Havana. I start working in the tourism industry. I start dealing with Americans every day, but I also start dealing with the hustlers. So I do remember that one day I went to a cigar factory with it was 12 women, African American from New York. We walked into the cigar factory and they say, what's your favorite rum of the ones you have tried in here? And I look around and I said, okay, my favorite is too expensive. And they said, what's your favorite rum? And I said, okay, Havana Club Master Selection of the ones that I have tried. So that one is $40. It's 12 women. Each one bought 2 bottles.
Right.
That's $960 that I put into the country's economy in 10 minutes.
Right.
In 10 minutes. How much did I get of that? Not much. My fee for the day was $120, but that's what they paid me. They tipped me as well, of course, but that's, and then when you go like, okay, classic cars had to pay the government, the ones who worked with tourism, had to pay the government $700 a month.
Wow.
And there were about 10,000 of them.
Ray, how much is a 1976 Lada in Havana?
Right now?
Yeah. $25,000?
Yeah, 25.
Idea,
Yeah,
but it was
25
about
works.
20 before I left.
Wow.
No, that was more.
No
That was more than
question,
25.
nothing displays the irrationality of the Cuban economy than a car that here would sell, if you could find a buyer for $11, is $25,000 US.
Yeah.
Well, that's $11 in Canada.
Canadian money, exactly.
That's right. Yeah, so maybe about 14.
Yeah, but he gets 1.5 miles a gallon, right?
That's right.
Man, you can't afford to put gas. You can't afford to put gas in anymore.
Yeah, it's sad. You know, it's sad because the Cuban people are brilliant and strong, and they deserve better. And they've been screwed by those outside and inside the country. And
Absolutely.
It's tragic. And I don't pray much, but if I do pray, it gets better for these people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. It's you said something remarkable from the inside and from the outside, because people in Cuba, the government likes to blame everything on the Miami based community and the pressure on the US government. But what are you doing to change things? Like,
I don't-
without
I don't-
getting into things, can you imagine somebody serving 27 years of prison for going to the streets and shouting freedom? That's what's happening now.
Yep.
The
Kids, young
trials
people.
for the people who went on the streets on July the 11th are
Mhm.
being like that. And it's a very, 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 very fortunate thing that I was not on the streets, because I'm a photographer. And I have, my blood is the blood of a photojournalist, of a researcher, of somebody who is fearless. If I had been on the streets with my camera, I would have taken photos. Those who went to the streets to take photos are serving between 8 and 18 months in prison for disorderly conduct.
Yep.
And it's a good thing that I didn't, because that very day in the afternoon at 5 p.m., there was already an agent in front of my house looking at my window, because I had been publishing on social media some criticism about the lines, about the way they were mishandling the pandemic, about a certain group of things. And it's obvious that they say, you need to keep an eye on this guy. So fortunately, I didn't go out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here telling the story.
I don't know if you can see me. I don't think my camera's working. But I'm very encouraged by listening to this group, and I'm going to certainly sign up for this committee.
Thank you.
I haven't been active in a long time since Pete and I went to Cuba the first few times. I don't know if you know, but I took Pete to Cuba for the first time back in the mid-90s, and had many adventures, and it was quite great. And I haven't been back since, I guess, 2007. So things have gone haywire in many ways down there, and I have no connection with people. I send mail down, it doesn't get delivered, emails get screwed up. It's very difficult, as you all know. So maybe together we could, with this committee, new committee being formed, we could do something really cool.
Yeah.
That's the idea, yeah.
Is this Mark? Was that Mark speaking?
Yeah.
Hi, it's because it didn't show up on my screen anyhow.
Yeah, my picture's not showing either. Something's wrong with my camera.
Yeah.
I'm not worth looking at anyway.
So we're all worth looking at. So one of the things that we want to do with the committee is, because, for instance, we were talking that the other day we were talking about with Yasel and Daniel, we were talking about the fact that something like Baseball Reference is the first thing a Cuban researcher goes to for statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And most people who do research, who are coming to learn about baseball in Major League Baseball, in Cuba, they never go to Baseball Reference. They try to find something else. They try to go to MLB.com, and MLB.com page in Cuba, for that page to load, it takes tender love and care. Baseball Reference is a fast page, so a lot of people don't know what Baseball Reference is in Cuba, and a lot of people in Cuba don't have a clue of what SABR is and the importance of the work SABR does in reviving the history of the game. Like right now, the fact that Major League Baseball recognized Negro Leagues as a major league, SABR played a crucial role in that.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that. It's not us bragging about how great our organization is. It's the truth. We do research, and the fact that so many people in Cuba don't have a clue of what SABR is, this is something that we also want to change with our committee.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, I do believe that that is going to be good for everyone, what we're trying to do. And again, we would also like to bring younger people here in the US into the ranks of SABR. And and all of us, we're videographers. I'm a photographer and a cameraman. Yasel is a great anchorman and producer. Daniel himself, right here, is also a good anchorman and a good journalist. And both me and Daniel speak English. Yasel needs to learn English, but he has a good voice, and we can put a caption on his words, and we can attract young generations into the ranks of SABR with video materials, which is what they like to consume nowadays.
Yeah, we need to bring back to life all these Cuban players before 1959. There is a sad, it's a very sad exercise that you can do anytime you want. Whenever you meet a Cuban just coming from the island, he's never been here, you can gather, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them together, and you ask them, what's the Independence Day in Cuba? They won't agree. That's the saddest thing that you can find. You know why? Because Castro wiped that out. Nobody, I mean, most of the people in Cuba don't know that May the 20th is the Independence Day in Cuba. So they will know, like, oh, October 10, oh, July 26, oh, January 1st. So they won't know. Castro wiped out presidents. I mean, people didn't know that the president of Cuba until 1976 was Osvaldo Dorticos. People don't know that. People believe that Castro was a president all the way down, and he was not. So imagine baseball. Baseball was wiped out. It was very sad when Luitian took the mound with Lasso in that race Cuba game in Havana, because people went crazy for Lasso. I mean, Lasso is very popular in Cuba, but if you compare Lasso, I'm not comparing the player, I'm comparing the history. If you compare Lasso to Tian, come on, the stadium should fall in pieces when you said Luitian is pitching the first pitch of the game, and it was like, oh, okay, they didn't know who it was. I mean, I believe young generations deserve to know who the baseball players from Cuba that already were here, actually even in the 60s and 70s, they exist. They were proud Cubans representing somehow the country in the best stage for baseball, which is MLB.
You know, Daniel, what you speak of is not neglect, it's intentional destruction. And example, the 2 baseball monuments at the Colon Cemetery, one from 1942 and one from 1951, it was a wonderful, Toriente, Mendez, many of the great players were first interred there. I offered for 10 years to pay for its restoration, and they won't do it. If I give them 10 times what it costs, they won't do it, because they don't want that memorial to stand, and it drove me crazy.
They don't want
the names on the newer monument disappear. And
they don't want anything. They don't want anything before 1959 to look great. That's the thing. That's basically it. They want to make sure that people believe that whatever they're doing is the best thing ever. So
I would like to know, however, Kit, how you managed to restore the plaques in La Tropical.
Well, I remember, Bill, you were there the first day we discovered them, and there was a caretaker there that I got to know, and my Spanish is Domino Spanish, and so I could only go up to 6 numbers with him, but we established a relationship, and through Clem, we asked the custodian to do it. We didn't go high up. If you go, biggest problem in Cuba is no one will take a risk of making a decision. Because you can only get in trouble. You can never get rewarded for good decision. You get all sorts of trouble for a bad decision. That's what I've learned for 41 trips there. But this guy had guts, and he also, you know, I would give him more than it cost, and he did it. My concern is it was not professional. So what he did is actually the bronze plaques, which commemorate, among other things, and Bill and I did a story in the National Pastime on the series in 1930, where the American National League All-Stars played, and that was the first year that Tropical was in use. I'm worried that they've been over-restored. They've been, and so I stopped doing it because it needs to be a professional. They tarnish quickly, bronze plaques. But that's what was done through. I didn't go. I found out you go high up, you get nowhere. Go low down, you find a good heart who will do the work.
Yeah, and the funny thing, whenever I brought groups in there, because I brought groups of people in there, they didn't allow me to take pictures. Like, what?
There's a plaque for the second was really the first, but the second World Championship of Amateur Baseball was played there in 1939. The first with England and
The Central American Games, and the
Yeah.
other one was the Dave Bancroft All Stars.
yeah, that's a 1930 where Hubble and there were 12 Hall of Famers. Al Lopez was the last survivor, and I think you talked to him, Bill, for the article.
Yeah, it's crazy because when we
Minute.
were writing the chapter on Babe Ruth's visit to Havana, I told Bill I want to go to
The
Hotel
Plaza
Plaza.
Hotel. I stayed in his room.
What
And
was
take a
the year?
picture
What was
of
the
it.
year of that? Because I
1920.
believe that Louis told me his father struck Ruth out, but I'm not sure if it was in that period. Was that around like mid-30s?
1920.
1920, and Tian's
Oh.
father would have been 14 years old. But here's
Yeah,
a
no,
book.
then it's a different. He must have done it at a different time.
Yeah, there's a book in Spanish and English that tells the story. And the good trivia question is, who did Ruth hit his 3 home runs against? And or rather, Toriente. And the pitcher was a Hall of Famer, but it had to be George Kelly, who was normally a first baseman. So there's a little
High
bit of
Pockets Kelly. That's
yeah, High Pockets Kelly. Yeah,
Oh.
it was
High
the
Pockets
pitcher,
Kelly.
I think.
And the thing is, I tried to go into the hotel. I asked security. I even talked to the manager of the hotel. Look, this is for a book that will promote your hotel, because people, when they read the book and they come to Cuba, they want to, and they like baseball, they're gonna want to stay here. And they said, no, but you can't take a picture.
It's room
And I said-
216. There's a plaque on the door, and it says
Yes.
Baby Ruth. Baby Ruth,
Yes,
which is what he
They
was called.
didn't. They didn't let me. They didn't let me in to take the picture. And I said, I have a question. If a client comes in and stays in the hotel, can they take a picture? And they said yes. I said, so what's your fear? Oh, matter of security. I said, dude, I'm sorry to tell you this, but every American or European or Brazilian or Venezuelan that comes into this country is a potential CIA agent. And you're not letting me, a Cuban, go in and take a photo? That's insane. I was so pissed. I came out of that hotel and my wife said, I think you need a beer. And I said, why? And she said, I don't know what happened in there, but you are pissed. So let's have a beer.
Reynaldo, you would not have been allowed in the hotel to ask the question. Right?
Yeah. So but it's part of them not knowing, of their lack of knowledge and also their lack of care.
So in the room, it's a suite that faces it's on the sort of faces right on the corner of the hotel, and inside is a display case with a bat that claims to be Babe Ruth's bat, and it looks like a Cuban homemade bat from the 1950s or 60s, and a baseball that's a ratty baseball, and they say these are Babe Ruth's, but clearly they're not. But the room is a pretty nice room, and I think he was mostly at the dog races at the Almendar's track. So, don't know.
Kid, it's very likely that there was a real Babe Ruth bat and a real Babe Ruth ball there, and
At one
somebody took care of it.
Well, that gets back to Mark's question about how do people survive in Cuba. The answer is you foreign remittances and you steal from the state.
Yeah, that Mark was Mark Rucker.
No, Mark Cantor asked that question.
Mark Rucker was on a moment ago, though.
Yeah.
Because I did see Mark Rucker left, and I'm like, oh.
Well, it's good to see so many Cubalistas on this call, and I'm hoping I talked to my partner Clem, and I'm hoping to get a trip in 2022. A lot of issues in terms of what I want to signal, and even taking foods in such short supply. But I'm hoping to get a tour, and I'd love to have you guys on it. It's a great event.
Well, it's going to be great. Right now, most of the support group is outside. Yasel is outside. I am outside. Diana, the young lady that was taking care of the group, she crossed the border the month before me. She crossed in November or December.
She came on the first plane ride she ever took, was taking our group to Holguin.
But there's still a lot of people there. Tony is there, and he is very enthusiastic.
Sergio's still there. You can do the
Yeah,
Rumble.
Sergio is Clem's right
a
hand.
new father at my age almost. Not my age, but he's too old to be a
Really?
father.
A new father?
His girlfriend had a baby a few months ago.
Oh, well,
Sorry,
I
I
haven't
didn't-
spoken to him since I left Cuba in
well,
August. I talked to him on the phone.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was the best day you ever had, but it's
Reynaldo, you can count on me for a future trip. I got to make that trip with my son, who's a photographer. He's a photography student, and
Oh, really?
falling in love with Cuba baseball. He's looking up all these great old cards. We want to get them for Louis, and we found some beautiful stadium photos from the 30s and a couple pictures of Louis' dad on cards, and he wants to go see the real thing now. So.
one of our biggest
wow.
regrets was not being able to persuade Mignoso to come back to Cuba. I would call him every time I came back to give him readings and report from Marrero. And he was, of course, the greatest offensive star, Marrero, the greatest pitcher in Cuba in the post-war era. And I said, you as much as they love you in Chicago, you can't imagine how much more you're loved in Cuba. And he said, and he had a son. Mignoso was 80. He had a kid who was in his maybe 18 or 19. And I said, you need to take your son so he can see. And I said, I'll take you. It won't cost you a penny. I'd love you to join the trip. And I expected him to do a sort of an anti-Castro rant because he was quite famous for his hatred of Castro. And a lot of the big players like Camilo and Mignoso, who lost property because they had houses there before the war, have a different attitude than the younger players. But he just said, no, my sister's passed away. There's nobody left. And it's too bad because it would have been in fact, the day he died, I was on a bus going to Matanzas from Havana to go to a ball game. And I was reading letters that former big leaguers wrote to Marrero. When I read the letter from Mignoso, in which he said, when I couldn't hit you, you got me out with that goddamn slider. I'm going to hit you when I play against you in heaven. And I arrived in Matanzas and was told that Mignoso passed away. It was a very, very sad day. It was astounding.
That's very powerful.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, but I wasn't on the bus that day because that was the day you guys had arranged for me and Pepito to go to Martin's grave.
To go to Cruces, I remember well.
Right. And I got.
And there's another good friend we lost.
Martin Jr. Yeah.
Yeah, a great man. Martin passed away, I guess, in 2018, maybe. And I visited with his son, his grandson, the other day, and or not the other day, my last trip there with Pepito. And one sad stories is there's wonderful collection of memorabilia at the Civic Museum in Cruces, and they've taken it from the family, and it's not being well preserved. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things, or the plans we had with the Hall of Fame. We weren't going to raise into international contribution because what they wanted to do was obviously not worth a visit. And what they don't now, if you want to create a museum for the revolution or for anything, they vote any resources they have. But for something like that, that's not the idea. I had an email the other day from Pedro Sierra.
Yep.
He's gonna come to the induction ceremony. We're going. Our team is going to Cooperstown.
Excellent. Give my best. He's a good man.
He is gonna send me something that he has written about Mignoso because he has had his own experiences with Mignoso. I met Pedro Sierra in Cooperstown by chance. I had no idea who he was. I see this black guy sitting with a Detroit Stars shirt, and I said, "Oh my God, he's a Negro leaguer. I'm gonna go talk to this guy." And all of a sudden, I see him and I'm like, this guy, this name sounds like I heard this name from someone. Like, are you Cuban? And he says, "Yes, me too." So we started a friendship that has lasted to this day. That was an induction week in 2016.
Well, we should talk, Reynaldo, because I'm thinking about bringing Louis there and his son to see Pedro and to see, Oliva and, Cott. They were both teammates of Louis in Minnesota.
Yes.
So maybe Louis could be part of your show that, when you're there.
That would even be greater, because one of the things that we want to do when I am clear to travel overnight is we're gonna try to also reach out to Tony Oliva and talk to him, because everyone has heard about the sophomore jinx, and Tony Oliva won a batting title in his first and his second season. Nobody else has done that.
Is his
So
brother
that's-
still alive?
Yes.
Juan Carlos was a pitching coach and a pitcher, and then a pitching coach in Pinar del Rio.
There is a plan to bring him to the ceremony. The
Oh,
Hall of
wow,
Fame,
that'd be
the Hall of
amazing.
Fame is aware of that, and there's a plan to bring him into the ceremony.
He often visits Tony. He travels back to the U.S. quite often, I think.
Well, it's a funny thing. It's one of the few cases that we can actually be surprised about, because Juan Carlos was a member of the Cuban national team while the Cuban government knew that Tony was a major leaguer. It's probably the only time it's happened, because whenever you have a relative
You can't
outside
leave the country.
of playing professional baseball, you cannot be a member of the Cuban national team.
Oh.
They made sure that you're not. There's this famous case, outfielder from Santiago de Cuba, all-time leader in Grand Slams in Cuban baseball.
No.
Several good seasons for Reutilio Hurtado. Several good seasons, never in the Cuban national team. Why? Because his brother was a professional boxer. He
Yep.
made a second team later on, late in his career, when it was obvious that he was not going to defect.
Just the story about Pedro Sierra. My favorite moment in Cuba ball, 21 trips, was a meeting with the veteran players. Mark, you talked about that time, and one of our members was looking for Negro leaguers in Cuba, and asked if anyone knew where Florentino Fernandez was, who played with the 1957 Detroit Stars. And little man put up his hand and said, "I'm Florentino Fernandez," and it happened to be Chico Fernandez's cousin.
Oh.
And Chico tried to get him. I called Chico when I got back, and he said, to give regards to him, and he said, "Yeah, I tried to get him in try it with the Dodgers in 1956, and the Dodgers wouldn't look at him. So I told him to set up for the Stars." But that's cute. That's a Cuba moment.
Well, there's a funny Cuban moment. Most people know that I'm a Phillies fan, so I asked questions about the Cubans who played for the Phillies in the 60s, which there were a number of them. And I talked about Tony Gonzalez. And they said to me, well, there were two Tony Gonzalez.
Great National Series player.
There was a light-skinned Tony Gonzalez and a dark-skinned. They said, we never thought that he was a good fielder. We never thought he was going to hit. And then I mentioned about Cookie Rojas. They said, Cookie never hit in Cuba. He never. It's just a funny story. Who knows what happened to both Tony and Cookie when they got to the majors. It was just funny about Tony. They actually were focused on the one that you had mentioned, Kid.
But just say the other moment memorable, and Bill, I should tell the story one day about how on the first Cuba ball tour you ended up doing the color commentary at the ball game. We look up and there's Bill in the press box and he's doing commentary.
Oh.
Only in Cuba.
Only in Cuba. Do you remember that when we met that night there was a blackout in the stadium?
Yep.
Power outage in the
Yeah.
night game?
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God, this is embarrassing.
Not too long. It was about, less than a half an hour, wasn't it?
Was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
before or after the stadium started falling on Mark's head?
No, that's another stadium. The
The
one, the one where-
shoulder. Yeah.
I must
one where-
say,
We were on television that night because they caught us singing the seventh inning stretch,
Oh yeah.
which is a very American thing to do. That's not necessarily a Cuban thing to do. So
But
they
the
got us
best-
on television that night.
but don't you like when between the middle of the fourth inning,
The umpires get key.
the umpires, the girls bring out the tea for the umpires. I thought that's pretty neat.
We just had
That is-
another Cuba ballista join us, Marlene Vogelsong.
Hey, Marlena. Hey,
We're
a
still
Cuba
here.
Hall- A Cuba
Hello.
Hall of
You're
Famer.
still here. I'm so sorry I'm so late. My other meeting ran so late. Where's Reynaldo?
I'm here.
Hola.
I
Ronaldo,
sent you text on
you're a pretty
Facebook.
good guest because I think this is the longest SABR meeting we've
Oh,
ever
yeah.
had in the Zoom era.
Awesome.
We're like, nobody wants it to end.
And there's
Yeah.
still
Get off
24
soon.
people left.
Yeah.
We do need to wrap up in the next 5 or 10 minutes though, because that'll have been 2 hours at that point, and I think we
Because
get cut off.
because SABR has a limit on the bandwidth, right?
Yeah.
No, we can go on forever. I wasn't saying we should end. I was complimenting.
I wasn't either. I was just being sarcastic.
No, but I think that we will need to
All
stop
right. All right.
at the 2 hour point. But hello, Marlene.
Hi.
One of the things that Reynaldo has told us about is that he's going to be filing a proposal to be recognized for a Cuban Research Baseball Committee, and we hope that you might join as one of the people that will want to be a member of it.
You there?
You recorded this, right?
It is recording.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you'll be able to see the whole thing.
That'll be wonderful.
The magic of SABR.
Ray, I hope you will put out something to us. Your good friends to know anything we can do to help.
Thank you.
You've gone through a remarkable experience, and you're a good man. And if whatever we can do for you,
Thank you.
I'd be a character reference, but I think what they propose is a prisoner swap, but I don't think that's in your interest.
Unless you can speak French, Spanish, and English.
It helps. It helps. They treated me pretty well there.
Yeah.
1 out of 3. I've got
They
3
treated me-
languages down pat: American, Canadian, and English.
So yeah, you got to learn Bostonian if you come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have Yankee friends across from the street, and they are very good friends with the people in this house. So it's interesting.
Have you chased down Steve Dalkowski's family in New Britain? I think I told Yasel about you're in the hometown of the hardest thrower baseball history, according to the legend.
Pete Dalkowski.
Yeah, Steve Dalkowski.
Steve Dalkowski.
Yeah.
Steve Dalkowski. He blew up his arm before.
No,
Actually-
well, yeah, he didn't matter. He pitched 7 or 8 years and couldn't find home plate, but a legendary. I know there's a guy here, a Panamanian big leaguer named Osvaldo Ozzy Chavarria, who played against him, said he hit him all the time. And according to his play, he actually got more hits off Dalkowski than Dalkowski surrendered in a 9-year career or something. So it's,
Wow.
Ted Williams said he was the fastest he ever faced, and I don't know. I heard that he was finally getting Earl Weaver was
Right.
managing when he was finally getting control of his pitch, and then he, I think it might have even been Jim Bouton or some other legendary baseball character hit a ground ball. He picked it up to throw it to first like a routine play and blew out his arm. And that was the Orioles were supposedly going to pull him up.
I talked to Andy Etcheburn once, and Andy said that he threw the ball was not wild inside out, so it was wild high, which surprised me. I'd never read it. He said no, that he could throw the ball, just couldn't keep it down.
Yeah, they
Rising
showed
fastball.
Nolan Ryan. They showed Nolan Ryan a card of 4 players, and they said, "Do you recognize anyone here?" And he says, "Oh, Steve Dalkowski."
Sad story. Bill, thanks for doing this. Thanks for setting it up, and great job. It's
Thank you.
so good to have you here. I'm sorry you're away from family, and we wanted you up in Vancouver and Nanaimo, but you're in good hands, I know.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And again, those who are interested, please email Bill so I can have your names and start our committee as soon as possible. I will be honored to have you guys on board.
Give your daughter a virtual hug for us.
Yeah.
I will be sending you guys pictures later to share.
How old is she now?
She is 5 and
She's-
she's starting school this Monday.
Time flies. She was just
Yeah,
a
hold on.
baby. She was just not born.
Yeah, she was.
Wow.
Well, you're doing a very brave and good thing for her, making a better life. It's gonna be great.
Okay,
Yes.
I don't know if you can see.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Love it.
Oh,
What a smile. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and those eyes.
And by the way, you got to, Ray, when you do your biography, your life story, you got to change the beginning. I thought for a minute when you talk about being a terrible student, I thought you were talking about me. So fix it up a bit because people will get confused.
I had good grades. I just didn't like to study.
Tell them you're smart and did well, didn't do well, then they'll know the difference. It's good.
This has been wonderful that SABR, all the chapters have been able to do these kinds of meetings. I see people from all around the country and in Kit's case, other countries. It's just been a very nice way to get to see each other in these times when it's difficult to see each other in person, even if
Yeah.
you're down the street.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been a true honor to be part of this. I really appreciate you guys, taking your time to listen to my story and asking all the questions that you asked.
Thank you for a very
enjoyable
evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Great
Talk
job, Bill.
soon, Ronaldo.
Thanks.
thanks.
care, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good
Adios.
night.
Adios.
All right.
Yes.
Yes. Bye, con Dios.